so much for making some time this morning. I'm so glad we get to chat.
Oh, me too.
It's so awesome. You're doing some amazing stuff out in the world and sharing all these other incredible stories. And now we get to talk about yours.
I know, right? Oh, do I have a story?
Yeah.
I've so many stories.
You have so many stories and you do so much stuff. And it's just like the world needs to know.
Well, here it is.
Here it is.
Here it is.
This is the time. I'm going to change.
Love with Holly Bailey.
Okay. So it's super informal, just like and then I'll cut it into something that if there's anything we need to cut out or anything like that, we will.
Awesome.
But otherwise, it's just like you and I having a good old yarn about all of the cool stuff that you're up to and what you're doing. And like, I'm so keen to chat about the podcast and what you've built with that so far. And how and then like I'm sure that we'll dig back into other things. You know what I thought about yesterday? Remember when you and I went and did that ballet class?
Oh my God. I forgot. How funny is it that I would do ballet?
Yeah, I was thinking like the footballer and the boxer go and do ballet, and we're just like the most ungraceful humans that ever graced that bar.
Oh, so bad.
Oh my God.
I mean, you'd think a boxer would know how to move their body a little bit or have some form of control.
It's much harder than I imagined it would be.
It was so hard.
It was hard. Anyway, we've got other things to be good at, and we'll let the ballerinas have the ballet.
Yes.
I think that's a good idea.
I would love to not that I could do anything in secret because I've proven that is probably impossible no matter what, but I would love to secretly learn ballet and then just come out one day and be like, yeah, I do ballet and like actually do it, and people would be like, I don't know, they're probably more shocked that I did something silently.
How did you pull that off?
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway. Good times. That was fun. That was funny. So first of all, why don't I just thank you for coming on. I'm very excited to have you here and share and get to have this chat with you and share a little bit about your story because you do so much amazing stuff, as I said. And I'd love to just kick off by learning a little bit about Rolling with the Punches, your podcast that has grown and turned into something phenomenal. And that was what kind of led me to get in touch again and go, oh my God, you're building something so cool. I'd love to hear about it. Do you want to share a little bit about how it started and how it's been going, where you're at?
Yeah. So it was COVID, mate, 2020, best year of my life and the hardest. But so we got locked down in March, end of March. So I had 2 gyms shut down. I had my personal training business shut down, and I picked up an opportunity with Ambulance Victoria. This kind of leads into the podcast in a weird way, but it does. So I got an opportunity to work with Ambulance Victoria and do their online virtual training. And in the proposal I put together for their Health and Wellness Club, I included a Feel Good Friday session, which was a social catch-up. And within a couple of weeks, I had evolved that into bringing on guests. So I'd started with my best mate who does aromatherapy and self-care and beauty therapy, and I thought I'll do a self-care episode. She can talk about the stuff that these guys can do at home to make themselves feel good and just help reduce stress. Yeah. And then, within the next couple of weeks, I put together a 6-week speaker schedule, and I was like, this is $30,000 worth of speakers from across the globe. Yeah. Wow, I've got a good network. And that sat in the back of my mind, and I thought, I've got all these recordings of the audio. I can rip the audio off of these, and one day when I've got like 20 or 30, I'll start rolling them out as a weekly podcast.
Yeah. Were you just bringing those like experts or the other people in your network just off your own bat, just to be support or an extra layer?
Yeah. And as I do, I never do things by half. So by the time that idea was kind of lodged into the back of my head, I borrowed some podcasting gear one day, and I got one of my first guest on the show, and I said, can you come to the gym? This was in between the hard lockdowns. Can you come to the gym and we'll try and record an episode. So we recorded 2 episodes that day. And on the way there, I thought of the name Roll with the Punches. And of course, I got really excited. I'm like, fucking, that's a cool name, isn't it? I'm a boxer. Roll with the punches. And it's the theory of the chats was going to be how people get through adversity. So I wanted to talk about people's lives and how we could maybe find hacks in what other people do or hear about stories. And then when I got there and my friend set up her podcasting gear and there were like mics with blue pop filters and I had my Danny Green mural in the background of the gym and I had this ring light and I was like, I'm so cool right now. And I took a photo through the lights, like through the ring light of me with the mural in the background and this like big ridiculous microphone you can see here.
Yeah.
And then I got even more excited and so we recorded the episode and as soon as we'd finished, I've put the photo up and told the world I had no idea how to get the sound onto a platform. And I was like, yeah, look out, guys, roll with the punches. I've got a podcast and it's coming to you. So then I just had to make it happen. And here we are 7 months down the track with 88 episodes to date and guests that I kind of pinch myself. I pinch myself and go, who am I?
It's amazing, Tiff. I know we were talking the other day and you were saying like it was really clear how impactful the conversations are for you as well. Like you're getting to share stories, but they're really like touching you in a way that sounds like you're surprised or you didn't expect that.
Big time. So why I started it and the 2 things I wanted to get out of it were I've always wanted to speak to more corporates, speak to more businesses, run events, do things that where I can share a story or share some insights and help people move through stuff or do stuff. And I saw that as an opportunity to, if I'm having conversations with people, all different people, and I'm managing those conversations, well, that's communication skills. So if I force myself to start this podcast, I'll improve my communication skills because when I found myself running the Zoom events, I was like, I could get better at this. Like, especially you get different people on, everyone's different to manage. And you've got to be able to think on the fly and manage that smoothly. So I got into that. And then also you and I have done a lot of networking in the past. I've done business networking for 5 years and probably way more, actually. Wow, I'm old. Shit. Yeah, longer than that. But this will raise my level of networking contact to a level that I wasn't experiencing before. Within 3 months, those 2 things delivered tenfold my expectations.
Yeah, wow.
Tenfold. The feedback I was getting was, Tiff, your interviewing skills have improved so much. And then the guests that I was getting on the show, I was just like, oh my God, why are these people saying yes to me? I'm a bogan personal training boxer from Tassie, sitting in my lounge room with a microphone.
However, everyone keeps saying yes, and then you're having these phenomenal conversations and it's just growing.
Yeah. Oh, I guess the first powerful conversation I had that really, and I get goosebumps now talking about it. You hear that a lot if you listen to the podcast. I always got goosebumps. But the first powerful conversation I had where I experienced getting to watch someone share something for the first time publicly and then sit back and see what that meant for them. Mm. And that really grew my passion for and my ability to ask people to come on and share something that it's really funny. My whole life I've been quite, I have the walls up and I don't let people get to know me. And that was a bit of something that kind of came out, with boxing and with this podcast. And I realized it's funny because the thing that makes this podcast powerful is the very thing that I would say I spent most of my life blocking. And that was connecting with people, communicating closely with people, being really raw and vulnerable to the nth degree. And that's the stuff that I am innately on the podcast. It wasn't deliberate. It came out. But that first guest was a really good friend of mine, Pharrell, and he's a boxing coach. So here we are working in this brute industry. And I knew like he had a lot of stories and he always talked quite openly about them, but there was one particular part of his story that I was one of very, very few that knew. But when I asked him to come on the podcast, I said, would you be willing to come on and get vulnerable with me? And he was like, oh, what do you mean? I was like, oh, like to whatever degree you want. Okay. So he's experienced depression and suicide. He has a sister who's disabled. He's got a lot of layers of stories that he can open up about. And that's what I was referring to. But what I didn't expect was his answer was, yeah, I think I'd like to tell my whole story. And his whole story was that he was born female and he's working in this male-dominated industry and nobody knew that. But, I mean, he told me when we first met 3 or 4 years before, but it got to the point, even because I'd never brought it up and discussed it again for years, it got to the point where I was like, did he trick me? Have I believed this for 4 years? And he was joking, you know, like you just get to the point of like, no. So, yeah, it was powerful, right? Because I saw the response he got and I saw how freeing that was. And that was really, I guess, it opened the floodgates to have conversations like that.
Yeah, amazing. Do you think like having other people be so vulnerable right in front of you, it doesn't really leave you with much choice?
It doesn't. It doesn't. It's just, it's beautiful. And some of the feedback I got from other guests was that, and it wasn't deliberate, but that I'd gotten them to open up about things that they didn't expect and share things they didn't expect. And some of those comments came from interviews that I didn't feel like were super, they weren't sharing anything unexpected or, you know, it felt very natural and innate, but you never know what someone's thinking or willing to share. So I shared my childhood experience on a podcast unexpectedly when my guest flipped the table on me when we went down a rabbit hole halfway through. And it was quite funny because I had a history of childhood sexual abuse. And when I've talked about boxing and the masks we wear, and I had alluded to stuff from my childhood, I had alluded to the fact that there was something, you know, that I resonated with people's stuff because I had some stuff. And I guess to me, I already felt like that was a fairly vulnerable. And so I didn't think that next step. So in my head, there was almost this story that everybody, you've told people know who you are, people know your experience, because a handful of my friends knew. But then that happened. And then for I reckon 3 days afterwards, I just had this feeling and I was like, God, that was quite powerful. And I didn't really think it was a big deal. That was really freeing and powerful. And now I know what my guests feel like. So when I meet someone and I get feedback. I had one this morning. Somebody reached out. They heard me and my story on another person's podcast and she's followed me and she reached out and to say that it resonated. And that is everything to me. Like that was my response to her was these conversations are everything to me. Because otherwise we just think we're the only one.
Completely. I had this conversation just yesterday that, you know, we think we're having this individual experience and we're alone in whatever it is that we've come up against or we're battling or we've been through, and it's just not the case.
Yeah.
Wow, it's amazing. Do you think there's something that shifted in you or there were, you know, to be able to do this?
Mate, I am literally, this 8 months I've been on, almost 8 months, 7 months I've been doing this. I said within the first 3 months, I have learned more and developed more and grown more as a person than anything I've ever dived into. My knowledge has grown tenfold. It has definitely changed me. I'm definitely a different person. And when I started, I don't feel like I'd put on a facade or a bravado, but I also did feel like within the first couple of months, first few episodes, I felt something fall away and I just fell into it. You know, like I don't plan any episodes at all. Sometimes I'll have 1 or 2 just in case questions if I don't know the person and I don't know. So, you know, sometimes I jump on, I don't know anything. Like the first time I had Mark Seymour coming on because Greg Page was the Yellow Wiggle and he was my first like famous guest.
Yeah.
And so at the end, we were talking about how I'd Googled him and he sung a cover of Throw Your Arms Around Me, one of my favourite songs. And he sung that a bit to me. And then one of my PT clients goes, you should get Mark Seymour on. And I was like, oh, righto.
Yeah.
So I emailed Mark Seymour and I said, so Greg Page just sung me your song on my podcast. And I'd like you to come on my podcast. And he said yes. But I'm not like, I love his song. That's one of the songs where I've just played that on repeat for the last bloody 20 years.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I don't really have a knowledge of music. I don't have a knowledge of him and his background. Like, I knew nothing. And so to know which direction that was going to head in. And I always, and he was the first guest that I felt he made me work for it, you know, like he wasn't there to make it easy for me. He didn't make it hard for me, but I really felt that I had to put some effort into getting him to a level of comfort and just sharing and bantering and chatting. And that was really cool. But yeah, like those are the skills that you have to develop on the move.
Yeah. Wow. Good on you, Tiff. Did you have a bit of an oh shit moment when he said yes?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I've had several since. I have them every time, you know. Now I'm having guests say yes. All guests now reach out to me. So tomorrow or in the next 3 days, I'll be dropping an episode, which is the co-author of the book series Chicken Soup for the Soul, like Mark Victor Hansen. Who doesn't know that book? This guy reached out to me now because Dr. John DeMartini told him that I had a great podcast and he'd want to come on it. Yeah. I was like, oh, so cool. Sure, Mark.
So good. How are you going to go in life?
Well, this is the thing. So I'm still doing gym, but, you know, I'm holding on to this. Like, this is my everything now. And if someone said you can do one or the other, well, I'd do this. Yeah. And I had a conversation on a recent podcast where I was talking about, I don't even remember what I was talking about. But at one point I was telling them how I'd gone out I've got a really good friend and a friend and client, and he's the sponsor of the show. And they have an app, a really great app. And for months, like probably 6 months, he's been saying, at some point, we'd love to have you work in sales on the app. We think it'd be really great. And I was interested because I think it's a fantastic app and I'm a people person and I love them. So I was like, I'd love to work with you. So definitely keep me in the loop. And this conversation's evolved as they've been working through COVID with this app development. And, you know, so it took a little bit longer. But the last time we went out for dinner and they were talking, and I'm obviously maxed out right now with 25 to 30 hours a week of just getting this podcast rolling. And then my expenses, obviously, through after COVID and having gyms and everything I've put into these other businesses that I bought into, my expenses went up 30%. So I've got to make 30% more money than I ever have before just to pay the bills, not to go out and party or go for any holidays, but just to pay the bills. So I'm doing that. Then I'm taking 20 to 30 hours a week of, you know, this new hobby. And at that dinner, he was saying, you know, you could build this and within 7 years, like you would buy into equity of it. And within 7 years, like you could sell, you'd be a shareholder and you'd have $10 million in your bank, $10 million. And it was the first time that I was just like, that doesn't even have a chance of pulling me away from what I've created here. If I didn't have the podcast, I'd be like, yeah, I'll make that happen. Of course. Who doesn't want $10 million? Yeah. But it was such a weird shift to be like, this podcast is literally making me struggle hard, but it doesn't feel like work. Like I'm happier than I've ever been. And I just wouldn't trade it, because when you realize how something makes you develop, when you realize that you're doing something that you love, when you realize that it's making a difference, and when you realize that you're good at it from this, like I'm not in a fuck, how good am I? Hope I'm allowed to swear on this conversation. You probably should have expected it anyway. But not from a, oh, how good am I? But from a, like, it's the feedback I'm getting. There's this inner critic that tells me I'm hideous. Don't worry about that. I hear that in my head every time I do an interview, every time I do anything. But the fact is, you've got to be able to step outside and go, yeah, I knew nothing about this, and I started doing it, and feedback tells me I'm doing something really right. I have to own that. We have to learn to own what we do well, and that's hard to do.
Absolutely, especially when it's brand new and all of that noise is coming in hard. Like, it's so
big time.
And I mean, I know for you, this isn't the first time that you've stepped into something brand new like this. Like, this sounds fully on purpose for you, and like the idea came to you for a reason. It was given to you. I'm going to get university, but it's like that was given to you for a reason, and you've taken it on, and now look what's opened up as a result.
100%.
However, like, I know that like buying into the gym game, and that was a new step for you too. I'd love to know, like, if you can take us back to when that sort of started to evolve, and how that.
Yeah. And that was university too. I'm a bit university at times. I like a little bit of woo-woo. But when that happened, so what was that? 2000. It was about a couple of years ago. So 2000, maybe the end of 2017. The conversation started, and I was approached by Murray Lees, who I'd met through. He trained with another personal trainer at the gym I was training at, and I'd known him for about 5 years, and through saying hi and having conversations, and I'd invited him to one of the networking breakfast meetings again. So I knew him in a business sense. And when I invited him there, he was working in finance at that time. He had a business in finance. That's all I really knew. And the mortgage brokers in the category, in the group afterwards, were like, how the hell did you get that guy to come? Like, he's huge in this industry. And I was like, oh, all right. Okay. So he's really smart, really good business dude. Yeah. And I really liked his values. I really liked how he communicated. So it's funny because I've always had a lot of spinning plates in the air in my business. And I'd thought to myself at times, if I invested in a part of my business to really give it that next level, like whether it be online coaching, whether it be the taking retreats, whether it be whatever, if I needed someone to step in as an investor, I was like, I'd probably approach him because I feel like he's got that business knowledge. He's got that next level. He's built something. He's got stuff that I don't have. Like I know how to punch people in the face and make them do push-ups.
Skills to have.
I've got the energy, and someone's got to have the brains.
Yeah, got it. Nice complementary skill set. So at this point, you're working for yourself with boxing clients and PT. Is that right?
Yep.
Cool. Yeah.
And so I get this phone call, and he's like, I've got an opportunity for you. I was like, oh, I love an opportunity.
Oh, inbound.
Yeah, inbound, okay. Out of the blue, and not even someone that I saw that often. I was like, all right, I'm listening. And at that point, they were looking at a couple of different businesses, and he was like, yeah, we're thinking we need a female in the sporting space, and and someone who can box. Anyway, conversation went on, and he was partnering with 2 Collingwood football players, Levi and Taylor. And so I said yes. But this is the pivotal point. I hung up the phone and I was like, I hadn't even told anyone that's kind of thought that this is like, I was like, that's fucking deliberate. Like, that's the world doing what the world does.
100%.
But the powerful part of the question, and this came to fruition again, or this is what made COVID easy, was at the time I was like, okay, right, so I've got this guy that's had massive, like I've got a millionaire, and then I've got 2 elite AFL players that obviously money is no issue in comparison to the life I live, whereas I'm a fairly average wage earning, business owning. I'm a sole trader. I live in Melbourne by myself. I'm a single female. Family's not here. Over the years, I'm really, really proud that I'd bought myself an apartment, so I have an investment. I'm certainly not rolling around in cash, but I've set up security, and security is important to me. And I was like, so this choice, risk versus reward for me, is 10 times what it is for them. So if it doesn't work, it's not such a big bump in their road. But if it doesn't work for me, at the time I was 35. I'm 35 and I'll lose everything. And it took, that everything didn't really come easy to me. Like I worked really hard for that, sacrificed a lot for that. So I was like, is it going to be worth it? Is what I learn, is the shift in how I work going to be big enough to warrant potentially losing that? Will I be okay? And the answer was resounding yes. So when COVID hit and the business got shut down, I was like, there was no time to waste on, oh, this wasn't meant to happen. Oh, poor me. It was like, you've already answered the question that it's okay if this ends. It's not up to you whether it ends because of a pandemic or because of a failure in business or because of a business partnership breakdown. None of that applies. What applies is you answered the question, move on. So I wasted no time or, more importantly, energy.
Yeah.
And then kind of, actually, you'll resonate with this. I remember sitting out the front courtyard, the first couple of weeks we were in hard lockdown, and I was laying on my little sun lounge, and I closed my eyes and I pictured Cocoville. Cocoville is the resort that you and I stayed at when we were taking Thailand fitness retreats. And I thought to myself, well, I would never give myself 2 weeks off. So it's sunny, it's summertime, and I'm just going to pretend. I'm not going to think about the money or anything, because all of that's out of my control. If I lose my house or don't lose my house, I can't control that by worrying about it. So I'm going to pretend that I'm on 2 weeks holiday.
Nice.
And that kind of set the energy and the tone for me to just kind of enjoy the time. And through that, you can be like, creativity is born. Creativity is not born from anxiety and worrying about fucking money.
Push and busyness and like, yeah.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
Has that been like, it's a strategy each time you've gone into something new to think, oh, is this going to be worth it? Like, it sounds like you go, there's emotion there for sure, like shit in your pants, like fearful, who bloody knows, but then going logical and going, well, risk versus reward here. Is it worth it? Yes or no? It becomes like a clear cut answer.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And, you know, I'm one to start a lot of things. I think that start things while you have the motivation, the excitement, and the energy. And if things, don't beat yourself up when you choose not to continue things for a valid reason. Don't buy into the inner critic. Don't buy into, I'm shit at this isn't working. Analyze it and be honest with yourself and be like, okay, online coaching, I started that. I did a 10-week course in Thailand. Our first trip to Thailand, I was like, I can't go back to working the way I'm working. This is not working. This is silly. I need to create a business where I'm, online coaching. So I got clients where I'm not expending so much energy and running back to the gym and this and that, and I can make change in people's lives. So I did a 10-week course, and the 10-week course promised me $10,000 a month of income. I was like, that's a lot. And so I launched it. And in my first month, I sold over $10,000 worth of coaching. And I was like, what the hell?
This is legit.
Legit. But I didn't. So it was an 8-week coaching program that I'd built. And after that first phase, I was like, something I didn't like about it. And I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I didn't like people would come to me, and I think it was a marketing flaw. People would come to me, but they would want macros, and it wasn't buying into what was behind training your body or sport or fitness. It wasn't getting that. I mean, on one side, I was getting to the heart of what people wanted. I was getting the vulnerable answers to why they actually wanted. They opened up a lot more, but they were still chasing that. Tell me what to eat. I want to manage how you manage you. I want to teach you how, not teach you what. I want to teach you how to think, how to get through life, so that when you want to make a change again, you know how to make a change again.
Yeah, got it. There's this theme, or like always seeking to really get to know the real stuff underneath, or seeking that vulnerability, and now like come through a journey where you're like fully in there with it, with you and with other people. It's pretty like amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. And can we talk a little bit about, because I know another full change of lifestyle was when you did the boxing and became a boxer. Like you weren't a boxer as a kid, right?
Definitely wasn't a boxer. Definitely wasn't a boxer as a kid.
Working corporate life, right?
Yeah, Holly, Wow. So this was the first, and this was the catalyst. Like this changed me beyond. I wasn't chasing change when I started this. So yeah, I was working in corporate. I was working in print. My life was going to work for a job that you just do because that's what came along, and so that's just what I did. I work in print, and I enjoyed what I did, and networking because I had to because my boss made me. That wasn't a choice either, but fuck, I'm happy he did because that served me really well. And I went to this talk on resilience, and it was upstairs at a gym. So it was Paul Taylor. He's been on my podcast several times now, networking. And after this talk on resilience, where we heard about, like the Navy SEALs and interrogation training and the mind and the brain and physiology and how it kind of all interconnects, and I was like, oh, really like this. And then we walked downstairs to get a tour of the gym. They had this really forward-thinking movement gym, Acumodum, and then also underneath the basement boxing gym. And I walked down there, and there's this massive poster with two dudes in suits with boxing gloves, and it was like advertising Executive Fight Club. And I'm like, what's that?
You already like super into health and fitness and had done some boxing, or?
I'd flailed my Everlast pink gloves around at the PCYC down the road in like a fit box class, like in your fitness style boxing classes. But funnily enough, I'd been in those classes. I was pretty hideous, to be honest. But I remember hitting the bag. This is what's funny too. It was my mindset back then was so kind of locked. So I was in there. I was very shy and quiet, and I'm in there hitting the bag. And I would work hard, and I would just think, I would really love it if Susie or Roy, which were the two trainers that I would train with, I was wanting them so badly to like come up and tap me on the shoulder and be like, mate, you should fight. You really, you need to be told, right? If you don't just be a boxer, you can't just go and ask someone to train you. In my mind, it was like, well, if I've got it, whatever it is, if I've got it, someone will tell me and invite me into the opportunity to do that. Because you don't just, I felt like an idiot saying I'd like to fight. Obviously, I'm ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I can't fight. I'm hideous. So when I saw this poster that was like, everyday humans can do it, I was like, well, I'm an everyday human.
That's me. I fall in that category.
Yep, definitely doing that. And I always loved to be a bit of this is one of the masks, like I like to do things to turn heads and show something. It was bravado. It was when I was younger, a bit of a tangent off track, but kind of when I was younger, I used to have fluorescent fudge pink hair, short haircut, fluorescent pink and bold. And this was just me having this loud personality because I needed to tell people that I was unique and different and special, but be fucked if I could say that with my words because I couldn't communicate that. I was just like, I have to show you, so you got to know, but I could never say it. And this was the same sort of thing. It was like, what can I do so that people can see that I'm strong and that I'm bold and that I'm amazing? How can I just show people? Because I don't really believe it. Let's be honest. I don't think I really believed it myself. So I saw this post and I was like, definitely sign me up, Scotty. I'm in. And 12 weeks we trained every night. And I remember the first time we did a little drill where we hold our gloves at our cheeks here and stand in front of, it was my mate, stand in front of my mate. And we just had to reach our hands out and just like learn how to roll and just let the glove, it wasn't even a punch. It was just a drill.
Yeah.
And the knot in my throat, because I couldn't control my body, my eyes would close and I'd look away and I couldn't control that. And it was very confronting. And I was like, this is embarrassing because obviously I'm a loudmouth. I've told everybody I'm going to be fighting in 12 weeks.
Mm.
This person's not even throwing a punch at me and I can't. And I was like, I'm going to cry when I leave this gym. I'm going to sit in my car and I'm going to cry so hysterically because it was just so confronting. And I was hideous in that gym. And then we get to the night before and I didn't sleep. So I felt fine all the way through, well, fine after that period. But I remember the night before, it just hit me and I was like, oh, God, I'm fighting tomorrow in front of 1,000 people. And what am I doing? So I didn't sleep the night before. I think I got to sleep at 6 a.m. and I had to get up at 7 to drive to the airport to pick up my mum, who was flying over from Tassie to watch me. And poor mum.
Things in small parts too. All in. You are not lying when you say that, because that is huge.
So I pick mum up and I take her for lunch. And I remember being like, she was sitting there and I was just like socially inept. I could not even, I was like, I'm sorry, mum. Like, I was just so wound up. And I said to her, and I meant it with every cell of my being, I will never, ever do something like this again, because no matter what, nothing is worth how I feel today. Nothing. And I meant that. I was like, this is bullshit. Anyway, we get to the event. Courtney, my mate Courtney. She was first fight up. She'd had one fight before. She's my teammate. She's first fight up. She wins. I'm like, yes. But then she's standing in the ring and they give her a microphone in front of 1,000 people. And I was like, shit, I don't want to win, right? So I'm about to fight in a couple of fights' time. And all of a sudden I don't want to win because I realised they're going to give me a microphone in front of 1,000 people and television cameras, because this was on Foxtel, this one. And I was like, I don't want to win.
Oh my
anyway,
God. That is
and then someone comes up. Actually, Rob was at that first fight. Yeah. Someone comes up to me and goes, your opponent's outside doing sprints. And I laughed and they're like, no, I'm serious. And I was like, you've got to go key gloves on and warm up. So it's kind of a whirlwind. And next minute I'm walking into my song and it was just a whirlwind for me. Like, I'd come back to I can't even, there's like, my cognition was just running its own race and I was just along for a ride. And all I can remember is, I remember the first 20 seconds. I go in and if you've ever had an adrenaline dump, I just remember thinking, whoa, it's been like 20 seconds. This is the hardest. This is awful. Do I really want to fight?
Is this in round one? Is this in it?
Yeah, this in round one. I was just like, my body just felt trash. And I'm like, oh my God. And because I was a real, like, just my pace, my work rate and my pace and my strength for a small person was huge. So I was just like, ah. Man. And then I thought, I remember thinking, I can't keep up that pace. I should pace myself. Now, it took me a long time to develop any defense awareness or skills. So obviously when I tried to think or slow the pace, it was just like I wore a couple and I was like, all right, back to plan one. I think I'll just deal with the exhaustion here. So I won that in the second round, that fight. But I remember going back in between the first round and my trainer was like, what are you doing? I'm like, what? He's like, why are you stopping? So I had this thing, like when my opponent would cover, like if I got to the ropes and she would cover and stop, I would just automatically, without thinking, I wasn't even aware that I was doing it, but I would stop because it was like, if you're fighting, I'm fighting, but if you're not, I'm not. So when she would stop and cover, I would stop. He's like, you don't stop until the ref tells. So he was getting really angry at me. So I was like, come on, we're not playing. Come on, come play with me.
Where I can punch you and it's fair and we're face to face.
And when they called the fight, because she just didn't want to fight anymore, and she was just wearing the punches, and so they called it, and I didn't really get it because I'd had 3 fights before. I thought to myself, I don't even know how boxing scored. I'd won 3 fights and I didn't know how the scoring was scored. So next minute something's happening and I'm looking around and people are cheering and I'm like, oh, the ref's called the fight. I've won. Yeah, but I had no idea. I'm just like, what's going on? And let me tell you, they had a hell of a time trying to get that mic back off me. No problems having a chat. And I thought back to that day before and how I felt and the feeling of elation afterwards of realising that I had just done it anyway, and that not even just that I'd won, but that I'd done it and I'd come through, and the feelings. I was like, when's the next one? I'm doing this again. I can't even explain.
Wow. Seriously, you are next level. Like how many each thing that we've talked about today, which is probably only this much of it, right? Like there's so many other things. I know there's more things and I'm sure there's stuff I don't know, but each thing is so different from where you've come from or what you've done.
Yeah.
Everything's just such a humongous change. It's so like, I don't know, you say it just kind of like, oh yeah, and then I did this. And it's just like, that's massive, Tiff. Like that's so courageous.
Yeah. I guess it's kind of, for me, it kind of links together. You know, for me, the boxing, like I became a personal trainer because Rob, your former employer.
Correct?
Yep. And he came to that first fight, and then I was doing my qualifications with no intention of becoming a personal trainer. I just thought that I was interested. And I was doing the last workshops one weekend, and he's asked me when I would finish. And I said, I'll be finished on Sunday. He goes, all right, I'm your client as of Monday. You just tell me how many times a week and how much. And I was like, what? Okay. And another friend did the same thing. And I was like, oh, all right. Within 6 months, I had too many clients. And I had to quit my job. And I had a great job and I loved it. And I'd worked really hard for the last 18 months to build a sales portfolio. And I was like, fuck, I feel like I can't say no because I feel like people choose this and work really and want the opportunity to leave a job, to be too busy to leave a job. Yeah. And I just kind of feel like I should give it a go because I can always go back to a job.
Completely.
Never go back to a job, Holly.
Resonate with that 100%. It's like, this is it. Like, job will be available. This is going to drive me.
Yeah. And for me, it was the understanding that, like I said, it's not about bodies. It's about when you do, for me, when I did something in the boxing ring, when I did something with my body, I changed my mind. When I looked back after 2 years of boxing and I glanced back at life, I was like, disengaged employee to engaged employee to an entrepreneur, business owner to I was like, whoa, that all happened. Like that stuff doesn't just happen by itself, but I didn't go and do a be a better employee course. I didn't go and do this course. It happened because of the discipline and the behaviors and the commitment and the dedication and the comfort zones that I pushed past inside the boxing ring, because how you do one thing is how you do everything. And when you develop your body, and which develops your physiology, which affects your mental resilience, everything flows over into that. And that's why I loved personal training. And so personal training and teaching people to fight, I knew I was changing their life and their personality and their ability to make choices and their understanding of the world that they moved around in. And, like now I'm just talking about it. So it's kind of, for me, each one links up because the desire to what I'm doing underneath it all is the same.
Yeah, the undercurrent of what you want to give or what you want to do is actually really similar, isn't it?
Yeah.
Amazing. And I love when you share in each section the commitment that you make. Like you make the commitment, you make the decision, and then the universe, like the world, delivers to you what you need or what it is that you need to get to the next step. Might throw some shit at you along the way, but it's always delivering kind of what you need.
100%. Like I listen to Joe Dispenza every year when I go home to Tassie, and when I re-listened to it this year, I was like, yeah, like when you take action, and this has happened a couple of times. It happened with the paramedics gig. It happened with Murray with the 12-round businesses. But when you choose something and you feel that that's where you want to go, and when you take any action at all, the result will come, and it won't always come directly the way you need to let go of how it's going to come. Because when Rain contacted me and said, I've got this idea about you working for the ambulance, 2 weeks prior, I sat down with Alison Wright, the nutritionist, and she said, you should get a gig like I've got 3 days a week working for the SES. I do presentations and speaking and events and all things nutrition, and you'd really love it. You should do something like that in health and wellness for a company. I went home and I was like, what a great idea. Got on to Seek. I was like, where do I find this? I took action. And then 2 weeks later, this
like,
gets like put together, and someone says, I've got an idea and here you can pack it like a fucking present. I was like, well, that's deliberate. So you got to let go of, like, I made that happen, but I didn't make that happen.
Yeah.
But I made that happen.
Yeah, that's right. Your action and your intent. Totally.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, I like to point, like, people always ask about, you know, how have you made this podcast? As are coming to me going, how do I get the growth that you're getting on your podcast? How are you doing this? And I'm like, I can't, in one respect, I can't teach you. You can't just read some instructions and do the things. It's kind of, you've got to embody stuff. But one thing that really resonates is I did everything myself. Everything. I learned how to edit. I went and got guests. I asked for people. I did it. I got uncomfortable. I sat in interviews when I felt like an imposter, like an idiot. You know, I did every single step. Every single day I'm posting about it. I'm telling people about it. I'm asking people. I'm asking for feedback. I'm asking for ratings and reviews. I'm asking if people like what I'm doing. I'm asking if they want to come on the show. But on top, but the other thing is, without people, it wasn't me. So I'm able to talk about the podcast and boast about it because I'm boasting about the vehicle that is now driving itself. It is not because of me and everything I did. It is because of I said 5, but it's more than 5, however many years of networking I did. It's because of the relationship. It's because of the people around me who I built a relationship with have supported me. I've had sponsors from month 2. People don't get sponsors on podcasts for years. I've had sponsors from month 2 and they're booked up until the end of March, another 2 months. Like, it's ridiculous. And that's because people will support you if you're not a dick. People will support you if you ask. You have to use the people around you, but you have to do things yourself. And I don't know how to teach someone how to do 2 contradictory things like that and make it make sense.
I completely get that. And you've like summarized this whole conversation and the whole premise of it so well, in the way that, like, there's so much more than meets the eye. Like, you're doing this podcast and it's like, okay, well, I can give you the instructions of how you'd create a podcast and how you'd put that out in the world. But you've spent years developing a network and years developing yourself and years building resilience to be able to do that. You can't teach that part. Like, that's part of what's behind the scenes that people don't see. You know, and wrap that up so well. It's amazing. Thank you.